The USS Horizon decelerated as it approached the Galactic Confederation's central hub, its sleek form gliding through the void like an arrow aimed at the heart of history. Ambassador Daniel Harris stood at the viewport, his seasoned eyes taking in the monumental sight of the space station coming into view. The station was an engineering marvel, a vast circular construct adorned with luminous rings and bustling ships docking at every port. It was a place where political power converged, where alliances were formed, and where histories were written. "This is the moment, Daniel," said Captain Elizabeth Mercer, standing beside him. Her voice was steady, her posture as unwavering as the mission itself. "The Confederation doesn't know it yet, but this is their first real test with humanity." Daniel nodded, his gaze never leaving the station. At 53 years old, his salt and pepper hair, and eyes that had seen the weight of numerous diplomatic crises made him a fitting leader for this historic mission. "We've spent years preparing for this," he muttered, "but we've never done it on this scale." Elizabeth turned to him, the familiar sharpness in her eyes. "You've always known how to handle a crisis, sir, but don't let your guard down just yet. The Confederation's protocols are unpredictable." Dr. Alan Palmer, the team's xenolinguist, entered the bridge, his attention focused on the tablet in his hand. "The linguistic patterns are strange. It's like they're testing us in ways we didn't anticipate. Something's off." Daniel glanced at him, raising an eyebrow. "What are you saying, Dr. Palmer?" "I'm not sure yet," Palmer replied, adjusting his glasses. "But I'll keep analyzing. Their language shifts seem subtle, but the formality is less than welcoming." Daniel exhaled slowly, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This was supposed to be Earth's moment of acceptance into the galactic fold, but it felt like something more was in play, something far more dangerous. "Any word from the Confederation?" Daniel asked, trying to steady his own nerves. The silence on the bridge was oppressive, the hum of the ship's advanced systems echoing in his ears. "Not yet," Lieutenant Paul Martinez answered from his station. "But we're getting close. Expect a transmission soon." Daniel turned back to the viewport. The Confederation's central hub now filled most of the view, its scale dwarfing even the USS Horizon, a vessel that represented humanity's finest achievements in diplomacy and military technology. It was a testament to everything humanity had worked for, their desire to join the galactic community and prove their worth as peacekeepers rather than conquerors. The silence on the bridge stretched as they approached the station, the tension palpable. For all their preparations, there was a nagging feeling that Earth was about to be thrust into a conflict it was not prepared for. A political game far more complicated than they had anticipated. "Docking control is hailing us," Martinez announced, pulling Daniel from his thoughts. "On screen," Elizabeth ordered, her voice cutting through the growing tension. The communication panel flickered to life, revealing an alien figure, a being with blue skin and a set of 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. "USS Horizon, this is docking control," the figure said, his voice smooth but firm. "Proceed to base 17 following the transmitted coordinates. Deviations will not be tolerated." Elizabeth exchanged a glance with Daniel. "Understood," she replied, her voice tight with barely contained wariness. "We're following your guidance." As the transmission ended, Daniel could sense Elizabeth's discomfort. Was it just me, or was that a bit more cold than expected? "I noticed it too," Daniel replied, his tone measured. "Stay alert. I'm not sure what's going on, but we're not here to make friends just yet." Dr. Palmer's voice came from behind them. "I've been comparing this transmission to our previous communications. The tone is sharper, more direct. This isn't the same Confederation we've been talking to." Elizabeth turned, a thoughtful look crossing her face. "You think they're testing us?" "Possibly," Palmer replied. "I've seen shifts in tone like this before, when people have something to hide." Daniel glanced at both of them, his expression resolute. "We'll proceed as planned, but stay sharp, all of you." As the Horizon neared its docking bay, Daniel excused himself to prepare in his quarters. He stood before a small, polished case and opened it carefully. Inside, a simple golden pin shaped like Earth's continents lay nestled in velvet. It was a symbol of his authority, but it was also something more. A quantum-linked emergency beacon. One press would alert Earth to any danger. It was a safeguard they had hoped never to use. The quiet of the room was momentarily interrupted by the soft glow of his communication screen. It flickered to life, and Lisa Harris, his wife, appeared on the screen. Despite the countless light years between them, the quantum system made her look as if she were standing right next to him. Her face, however, was filled with concern. "Hey, honey," Daniel said with a forced smile. "Just about to dock." "How are you feeling?" she asked, her voice gentle but tinged with worry. "Like I'm carrying the weight of Earth on my shoulders," he admitted, his smile fading. "But ready." Lisa's eyes softened. The president called again. "She wanted me to remind you that Protocol Phoenix is ready, just in case." Daniel nodded, his stomach tightening. "I hope we don't need it." "Me too," Lisa replied, her voice quiet. "But you be careful. Earth's counting on you." Daniel didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached for the golden pin again, his fingers brushing over it as if seeking strength. "I'll be fine. I'll call you after the meeting tomorrow. We'll have good news, I promise." Lisa's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Come back to me, Daniel. We're waiting." "I will," he said softly, knowing that both of them were already aware of the stakes. He closed the connection, but the weight of the conversation lingered. After dressing in his formal diplomatic attire, a navy blue suit with the Earth emblem on the breast pocket, Daniel stood in front of the mirror, taking a deep breath. He looked every bit the ambassador, polished, poised, and ready. But beneath the surface, he could feel the tension building. The universe was watching them, and what he did next would define Earth's place in the galaxy. The ship shuddered slightly as it docked. The crew was ready. The tension was palpable. They had made it this far, but what lay ahead was anyone's guess. Daniel stepped out of his quarters and made his way to the main deck. Elizabeth and Dr. Palmer were already there, along with 4 security officers and 2 other diplomats. "Remember," Daniel addressed the group, his voice firm, "we represent all of humanity today. Our goal is peaceful admission into the Confederation. We follow their protocols, but stay alert." The airlock cycled open, and they were met by 3 aliens. The tallest of them, a Talaxian with iridescent scales, stood in the center. "Ambassador Harris," the Talaxian said in perfect English, his voice rich and smooth. "I am Coordinator Selmarin. Welcome to the Central Hub." Daniel stepped forward, bowing respectfully. "Thank you, Coordinator. We are honored to be here." As they followed Selmarin through the station's wide corridors, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The eyes of every alien in the vicinity seemed to watch them. Curious, calculating, even hostile. The grandeur of the Confederation's space station only served to amplify the unease. This was not a welcoming ceremony. This was a performance, and they were the unwitting actors. The USS Horizon edged closer to the Galactic Confederation hub, its sleek hull cutting through the dark abyss of space. As it neared the vast station, a sense of unease settled over the crew. The once awe-inspiring sight of the Confederation's central hub, a massive wheel of shining metal and light, now seemed less like a beacon of unity and more like a looming fortress. "Lieutenant, are we cleared for final approach?" Captain Elizabeth Mercer's voice was calm, but her eyes narrowed slightly as she studied the incoming scans on the console. "Not yet, Captain," Lieutenant Martinez replied, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. "Their scanners are unusually strong. The level of scrutiny is beyond standard protocol." Elizabeth's brow furrowed. "Increase shielding. We'll need full protection on all sides." "Yes, ma'am," Martinez responded, his voice betraying a hint of tension as he initiated the requested adjustments. Beside her, Ambassador Daniel Harris stood still, his hands clasped behind his back. The steady hum of the ship's engines was now an unwelcome presence, a reminder of the rising anxiety that simmered beneath the surface of this diplomatic mission. His gaze flickered to the view screen, where the massive Confederation station rotated before them, the docking bay growing nearer. "You sense it too, don't you?" Daniel asked, his voice low but clear. Elizabeth glanced at him, her jaw set. "The hostility? Yeah, I've felt it ever since we received that strange transmission. The Confederation's been less than transparent with us." Daniel exhaled sharply, his eyes never leaving the station. "We knew this wasn't going to be easy, but this isn't what I expected." Dr. Alan Palmer, who had been scanning data from his tablet, approached them, His expression was thoughtful, his usual calm demeanor strained. The patterns in their communications are inconsistent with what was agreed upon. I've been comparing their language to prior transmissions, and the shift is unmistakable. There's a clear tension in their tone. They're treating us like potential adversaries, not allies. Elizabeth's eyes narrowed. So they're already expecting trouble. That's the only explanation, Palmer replied, his brow furrowing as he glanced down at his tablet again. But why would they prepare for something they haven't even discussed? Before they could speculate further, the comms officer, Lieutenant Paul Martinez, interrupted them. We're being hailed, Captain. It's docking control. Put it through, Elizabeth ordered, her tone hardening as she prepared for the next exchange. The screen flickered to life, revealing the same blue-skinned alien from the earlier transmission, this time flanked by two others. USS Horizon, this is docking control, the alien said, its voice smooth but distant. Proceed to base 17. You are to follow the transmitted coordinates exactly. Any deviation from the path will be met with consequences. The words were polite, even courteous, but the underlying threat was unmistakable. Elizabeth exchanged a quick glance with Daniel, her lips tightening. Understood, she said, her voice betraying none of the apprehension she felt. She turned to Daniel after the transmission ended. Are we being paranoid, or is this just too much? Daniel didn't answer immediately. His mind raced through possibilities, each darker than the last. I don't know, but something's off. Keep an eye on everything. Something feels engineered. Elizabeth nodded curtly and turned to the helm. Adjust course, Lieutenant. Base 17, coordinates locked in. As the ship adjusted its trajectory, Daniel retreated to the observation deck, hoping for some clarity in the stillness. The station was beautiful, no doubt, but beneath its shining exterior, he sensed a web of lies, subtle, almost invisible, but dangerous nonetheless. Dr. Palmer joined him a few moments later, his eyes scanning the data that continued to flood his tablet. I've been trying to make sense of their language. It's been nothing but formal imperatives since we got close. We've exchanged pleasantries with them before, but these messages don't contain the usual pleasantries. No polite please or thank you, no friendly inquiries, just direct orders. Something is happening, and they're treating us like they know we're the problem. Daniel glanced at Palmer, his unease growing. Do you think they've already decided we're a threat? I can't say for certain, Palmer answered, his voice laced with concern. But something is definitely wrong. These subtle shifts in tone, shifts that we were never supposed to notice. Daniel finished for him. His thoughts turned to Lisa, the way her voice had sounded when they last spoke. Concern, worry. It was the same way he felt now. Elizabeth's voice crackled over the comm, interrupting their quiet conversation. We've got a problem. They've redirected us. They want us to approach from a different angle. Daniel's heart sank. What kind of redirection? Elizabeth's reply was immediate, her voice sharp with frustration. The vector they've assigned us to is far too restrictive. We're being funneled into a narrow corridor, an area of space that offers little room for maneuver. They've essentially boxed us in. Daniel's mind raced. This isn't just about docking, is it? No, Elizabeth's voice was grim. This feels like a setup, a trap. The quiet hum of the ship's systems suddenly seemed louder. The idea that Earth's first diplomatic mission might be a trap sent a shiver through Daniel's spine. He had been prepared for many things, awkward silences, political posturing, but not this. Not something that felt like a prelude to something worse. He walked briskly back to the command deck, where Elizabeth was already issuing commands to adjust their approach. We need to keep our composure, he said firmly. We proceed according to protocol, but we stay alert. This isn't just a formality. If they want to test us, we'll pass with flying colors, but we'll be ready for whatever comes next. Elizabeth looked at him, her eyes filled with determination. Understood, sir, but if they make a move, we make ours, Daniel finished, and we make it count. The ship's systems hummed as they followed the new, narrower course. As they neared the station, the tension in the air was almost suffocating. Daniel's thoughts were momentarily interrupted by a sudden flicker of movement outside the viewport. A faint shimmer caught his eye. a subtle change in the station's lights. The Confederation's hub, so carefully arranged and immaculate, seemed to shift before his eyes, casting a shadow over his thoughts. "Brace yourselves," Daniel muttered under his breath, though no one could hear him. "We're walking into something bigger than we thought." The gravity of the situation settled over the USS Horizon as the Confederation's leaders, cloaked in arrogance and cold politeness, laid bare their accusation. The ship's bridge was a tense silence, the kind that enveloped those moments just before a storm. It felt like the calm before a betrayal. "Ambassador Harris," the High Arbiter's voice rang out, steady but with a metallic edge. "The Confederation has reviewed your planetary records, and we have reason to believe that Earth has been preparing for war. Your rapid technological advancements, faster than light travel, weapons development, suggest far more than peaceful intentions." The council chamber before them buzzed with a hushed murmur, delegates of all species exchanging glances. Daniel stood tall at the center of the chamber, a figure of calm and calculated composure. He had been trained for moments like this, but nothing could have prepared him for the magnitude of this moment. "Ambassador, you stand accused of concealing your true intentions from the Confederation," the High Arbiter continued, a subtle smile on his face, as if savoring the power play. "We have evidence to support these claims. Evidence which will now be shown to the Assembly." A laser plasma display flickered on, casting a blue glow across the room. The image that appeared was one Daniel instantly recognized, an artificial construction of warships that did not exist. The ships in the holographic projection were nothing but cleverly manipulated images, a fabrication to bolster their accusations. "False," Daniel declared immediately, his voice firm, but his heart pounded. "This is not our fleet. We do not possess what you're showing. It's a manipulation, a lie." The room fell silent. Across the chamber, delegates from different species exchanged uncertain glances. The High Arbiter raised his hands, signaling for calm. "Do not mistake this for a mistake," he said, his voice cold. "The Confederation has reviewed the data gathered by the Vaughn Directorate. Your world's military expansion is a threat to galactic peace, Ambassador. We can no longer ignore it. The Council moves to classify Earth as a Level 1 threat species." Daniel's stomach turned. Level 1, an unspoken death sentence for any species that was considered too dangerous to coexist with the rest of the galaxy. "What you're accusing us of is preposterous," Daniel said, trying to retain his composure. His voice grew louder now, the weight of every word pressing against him. "This is not Earth's policy. We came here to build bridges, to show that humanity seeks peace." But the words felt hollow as soon as they left his lips. The council members were no longer listening. They were only waiting for their moment to cast their judgment. He could feel the eyes of the room on him now, the silent accusation hanging in the air. As the High Arbiter nodded to one of his aides, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted. It was as if the air had thickened, as if the assembly had already decided what the outcome would be. The laser plasma display shifted again, showing footage, again fabricated, of Earth's supposed war preparations. The images now showed Earth's soil being dug up for massive underground facilities, pictures of what looked like military projects deep beneath the surface. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. These images were meticulously engineered, all to further the narrative that Earth had hidden its true nature. "We are not what you've shown," Daniel insisted, trying to hold his ground. "I'm asking for proper representation, for the right to defend Earth's honor. This isn't just about our people. This is about what you're doing to us." But before the words fully left his lips, the High Arbiter's voice boomed. "Enough. The Council has seen enough. By unanimous decision, we now vote to classify humanity as a threat species. Your ambassador's lies will no longer be tolerated. Earth's entrance into the Confederation will not happen." Daniel's heart sank, but it wasn't the decision that tore him apart. It was the realization that this wasn't about truth. This wasn't a diplomatic meeting, it was a trial, and the outcome had been decided before they even arrived. The High Arbiter turned his back, signaling that the vote would now commence. Daniel felt the ground beneath his feet shift. He had lost this fight, but he couldn't lose Earth. He wouldn't. "Ambassador, this isn't over," Elizabeth whispered, stepping up beside him. but there was a growing unease in her voice. She had always been the one to read the room, and now she saw what Daniel had only suspected. Something had gone terribly wrong. Before they could react, the High Arbiter spoke again, this time with chilling finality. By the decision of this council, Earth is hereby classified as a Level 1 threat species, and its representative, Ambassador Daniel Harris, is hereby sentenced to immediate execution. The words crashed down on Daniel like a wave, but his feet remained steady. Execution. The room began to swirl as his mind grasped for a plan, a way to stop this. But there was no time. The decision was made. They would make an example of him, and through him, Earth. The false charges, the twisted evidence, they would be used to justify it all. A strange sense of helplessness filled him, but only for a moment. The noise of the chamber faded into nothing as he focused on the only thing that mattered now. Survival. Justice. As the laser plasma display shifted once again, this time showing the lethal procedure that would end his life, Daniel's thoughts turned to Lisa. He'd never imagined this would be the price of diplomacy, but here it was, an unthinkable reality. The decision is final, the High Arbiter declared. Execution will be carried out immediately. Elizabeth tried to push forward but was quickly restrained by guards. Daniel watched as his life began to unravel, a chain of events set into motion by those who had never truly listened. He looked out across the chamber, seeing no allies, no escape. The truth didn't matter here, and then it hit him. The betrayal wasn't just political, it was deeply personal. They had wanted him to fail, and now they were going to make an example of him. I demand communication with Earth. Daniel's voice cracked through the tension, but his words were swallowed by the collective will of the Confederation. It didn't matter anymore. Daniel stood tall, the weight of his role as Earth's representative heavier than it had ever been. In that moment, he knew Earth was not just fighting for survival, it was fighting for the future. His death would mark the beginning of something bigger than any of them could ever imagine. The chamber was silent as the High Arbiter gave the final order, and the last words Daniel Harris ever spoke were not of fear, but of defiance. Earth will not bow to intimidation. As the energy field surrounded him, the final flash of light filled the room, and then there was only darkness. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. The shocking, brutal execution of their ambassador sent waves of disbelief and anger across the planet. But within the chaos, the seeds of resistance began to take root. The Horizon's crew was detained. The diplomatic channels fell silent. The message was clear. Earth had been betrayed on a galactic scale. The Confederation would learn that Earth was not a planet to be manipulated, not a people to be intimidated. And so humanity began to make its move. The galaxy had just underestimated them in the most dangerous way possible. The chamber fell into an eerie silence, the kind that comes right before a storm. The High Arbiter, his voice still echoing in Daniel Harris's ears, had given the order. The energy field surrounding Daniel flickered, becoming brighter as the tension in the room reached its peak. Daniel's thoughts moved faster than his heart could keep up. This wasn't the first time he'd faced a dangerous negotiation, but this was different. This wasn't a diplomatic standoff. This was a statement. His execution, carried out in front of an entire galaxy, was a signal to Earth, a message designed to break them. The press of a button by the High Arbiter sent a silent command to the system. The energy field began to tighten, pulsing with the cruel electric glow of inevitability. Daniel's final moments were now broadcasted across the galaxy. His death a public display meant to solidify the Confederation's authority. The image of his face, calm yet determined, was captured forever in the eyes of hundreds of millions. As the energy field surged, Daniel's eyes locked onto the camera lens, a symbolic gesture for Earth. Earth will not bow to intimidation, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. His final words would echo long after his body disappeared. The High Arbiter, standing beside the central platform, gestured to the security forces. Execute him! The order was instantaneous. A flash of light consumed Daniel's form, his body dissolving in the energy field. The execution was swift, merciless. Silence followed, an unnatural stillness that enveloped the chamber. There was no room for grief or resistance. The galaxy watched, frozen in time. Daniel Harris, ambassador of Earth, was no more. But far away on Earth itself, Lisa Harris stood frozen in front of a screen. The broadcast had reached her moments ago, as the world's capital shifted into chaos. The grainy image of her husband's last stand flickered in front of her eyes. The tears welled up in her eyes, but there was no room for them. This wasn't the time for mourning. Her mind shifted into overdrive as she remembered what they had prepared for, what they had hoped never to use. The golden pin, the beacon Daniel had worn, now sat cold in her hand. Her fingers trembled as she pressed the small button on the back, activating the quantum emergency signal. It was a call to arms, one designed for a moment just like this. The signal was encrypted, invisible to the Confederation's prying eyes, yet potent enough to trigger a response from Earth's hidden forces. Lisa's heart pounded as she watched the small screen come to life, blinking once, then again. She whispered the words under her breath. "Activate Phoenix Protocol." At that moment, across the Earth's hidden bases, a coordinated response began to unfold. The world's darkest secrets, its hidden military assets, began to awaken. Earth had prepared for this exact contingency, the day when diplomacy failed and the Confederation would reveal its true nature. The Phoenix Protocol, established in the quiet shadows of Earth's military establishment, was now in motion. No longer would Earth sit idly by while its people were wiped out or forced into submission. It was time for the galaxy to understand one fundamental truth. Humanity was not to be underestimated. As the Phoenix Protocol activated, the first signs of retaliation emerged. The message sent through the quantum network was clear. Earth's assets had been amassing in secret for years. The deep space vessels that had been silently constructed, the weapon systems that had been hidden beneath layers of civilian infrastructure, were now ready to fight back. The Confederation had no idea what was coming for them. In orbit around Earth, thousands of hidden warships powered up. No longer were these ships mere science vessels or trade vessels. These ships were designed for this very moment, constructed from the wreckage of alien technology, using Earth's rapid ingenuity to turn the tables. Hidden beneath the surface of moons, deep in asteroid fields and within planetary rings, Earth's true fleet was now fully operational. Back on Earth, Lisa watched the emergency systems come to life, a display of determination flashing on the screens in front of her. The message was being transmitted to every military base across the planet. Activate Phase 1. Inside the Antarctic Command Center, President Laura Wilson stood with Admiral Frank Donovan, watching the map of the galaxy flicker to life. A strategy, years in the making, was now unfolding before their eyes. The Confederation had thought they could destroy Earth's diplomatic mission. They had thought the execution of Ambassador Daniel Harris would crush humanity's spirit. What they didn't realize was that Earth had been preparing for this exact moment for decades. Phase 1 is active, Madam President, Admiral Donovan confirmed, his voice steady. We've activated the quantum encryption network. The fleet is moving into position. The room was filled with a calm efficiency, but there was no mistaking the weight of the moment. President Wilson stood silent for a long time, watching the countdown on the screen. Her eyes narrowed. The Confederation will soon learn that Earth is not their enemy. We are not here to destroy, but to demand justice. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Confederation's central hub, chaos was beginning to unfold. The shockwave of Daniel Harris's execution had sent ripples across the galaxy. The execution was meant to subdue Earth. Instead, it had ignited a fire. Sir, the system is detecting unusual energy patterns across Confederation space, an aide reported to General Vexner, who had been celebrating his supposed victory. What do you mean unusual? Vexner barked, his voice thick with disbelief. Something is wrong, the aide stammered, eyes widening. Thousands of them. They're emerging from hyperspace, but they aren't using our jump points. Impossible, Vexner muttered, his mouth dry. We've neutralized their defenses. They shouldn't have this capability. Outside the central hub, the first wave of Earth's retaliation descended. Ships appeared out of nowhere, their sleek forms materializing in perfect synchronization, as if the universe itself had bent to accommodate them. These ships were far more advanced than anything the Confederation had ever seen. They were Earth's final defense, its last stand. Within moments, Earth's fleet surrounded key Confederation military assets. The world's most advanced weaponry, still cloaked in secrecy, came online. Thousands of vessels equipped with technology decades ahead of the Confederation's best were now locking their sights on their targets. Earth's forces didn't seek to destroy. No, that wasn't the plan. Instead, they executed a surgical strike on the Confederation's military infrastructure. In a series of flawless maneuvers, Earth disabled power grids, neutralized weapon systems, and rendered entire fleets useless. It was a show of force, but it was far more than that. It was justice. Back in the command center, President Wilson gave the final order. Phase 2. Strike with intent to disable. Leave nothing behind but the truth. And just like that, the galaxy's balance shifted. Earth had been underestimated, betrayed, and misjudged. The Confederation's greatest mistake had been assuming that Earth's peaceful intentions meant weakness. The retaliation had begun, and it wasn't about power, it was about justice. Earth had been tested, and now it would test the galaxy. In orbit around Earth, a new chapter of human strength and resilience was beginning to be written. The final phase of Earth's retaliation unfolded with the cold precision of a well-oiled machine. Across the galaxy, a coordinated wave of attacks hit Confederation assets with surgical precision, taking out key military targets without wasting a single shot. No asteroid was left unscanned, no ship left untouched by Earth's hidden might. The Confederation's once unshakable sense of superiority now crumbled, as Earth's forces executed their plans with a focused intensity that no one had anticipated. On the USS Retribution, Captain Olivia Clark stood at the center of the command deck, the crew's final preparations unfolding around her. Her expression was calm, the weight of her responsibility showing in the sharpness of her eyes. The Retribution, Earth's most powerful warship, had been kept under wraps, its massive size and terrifying firepower hidden from the Confederation until this moment. As it emerged from its concealed position in the Oort cloud, the station's sensors began to register the energy surge from its quantum drives. It was like a shadow emerging from the dark, a stark reminder that Earth had been preparing for this day for far longer than anyone had realized. "Captain, the enemy fleet is positioned as we predicted," reported Lieutenant Kalin, his fingers flying over the console as strategic data flooded his screen. "All systems are green. We're ready for launch." "Prepare to engage at the designated coordinates," Captain Clark responded, her voice firm with resolve. "Target only the critical infrastructure. We're not here to conquer, we're here to restore balance." The crew nodded, each soldier and officer fully aware of the gravity of their mission. The thought of retribution, of blind fury for the death of Ambassador Harris, was nowhere in their minds. Their orders were clear. Earth's response was not one of revenge, but of calculated justice. "Commander, I want the fleet in position," Captain Clark ordered, watching the tactical screen. "No sudden moves. We engage with precision, one strike at a time." In the command center, the Earth forces coordinated with the finesse of a practiced orchestra. Military leaders in Antarctica, in Earth's hidden bases, had already triggered the next phase of their offensive. Thousands of ships, each with their own unique assignment, began to make their way to strategic points across Confederation space. Laser plasma displays lit up the room, showing the fleet's position, their targets, and their calculated pathways. The plans had been set into motion years ago, but now Earth's hidden strength was becoming a reality. Admiral Frank Donovan was watching the holographic displays with laser focus. His team had worked tirelessly to ensure that every move counted. "Target the weapons systems and communication hubs. Avoid civilian structures. We are not their enemies." The fleet split into several strike groups. Each ship was equipped with advanced weaponry, but their primary mission wasn't to destroy. It was to incapacitate. Through Earth's reverse-engineered alien technology, they had developed weapon systems capable of neutralizing entire fleets without firing a single destructive shot. Energy grids were disabled, weapon silos rendered inoperative, and critical infrastructure was incapacitated, leaving the Confederation forces in disarray. At the heart of the Confederation's central hub, General Wexner, who had once been so confident of his superiority, now sat in stunned silence. His fingers hovered over a tactical console, but no matter how fast he worked, the results were the same. His ships, once seen as the pinnacle of military might, were now powerless. The displays on his screen showed their engines disabled, their weapons offline, and their defensive systems in shambles. "This can't be happening," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head. The Vorn general had never been caught so off guard in his entire career. He slammed his fist onto the table, frustration bleeding through his usually unshakable composure. "They knew," Vexner hissed. "They were always watching." But it wasn't just military might that was causing the Confederation to tremble. It was the realization that Earth had never truly been the weak, undeveloped species they had assumed. From the dark corners of the galaxy, Earth's hidden strength was finally on full display. Sharp, disciplined, and unstoppable. On the USS Retribution's bridge, Captain Clark's voice cut through the static of the command deck. "Activate the secondary grid," she ordered. The ship's weapon systems came to life, sending an array of precise strikes toward the Confederate defense stations surrounding the central hub. These were not the kinds of shots that tore apart ships. They were the kind that cut off vital functions, neutralizing an enemy without triggering mass destruction. In space, the Retribution fired a series of energy beams, their targets marked with perfect accuracy. Each strike disabled a vital communication relay, cutting off the Confederation's ability to communicate with its other fleets. Within moments, the network of Confederate ships fell into chaos as their once coordinated defense system collapsed. "I've got a visual on the high command," Lieutenant Kalin reported, zooming in on the central hub. "There's movement. They're scrambling to organize a counterattack." Captain Clark's eyes narrowed. She understood that their mission was far from over. The Confederation, though momentarily stunned, would not go down without a fight. But Earth's response was never meant to be a massacre. It was about proving that justice was stronger than destruction. Down on the surface of Earth, President Wilson watched the fleet's progress from the command center in Antarctica. She stood before a massive screen, the galaxy's stars glittering against the backdrop of the battle. "They will understand soon enough," she said, her voice resolute. "Humanity is not a threat, but neither are we willing to be silenced." The Phoenix Protocol, once a contingency, had now become Earth's statement to the galaxy. With the secret fleet mobilized and the world's best minds in command, Earth was now in the process of dismantling the Confederation's stranglehold on galactic diplomacy. The response wasn't just military. It was a rebuke of the lies that had been spread, a warning to those who thought they could erase Earth's place in the stars. Meanwhile, back on the battlefield, the strikes continued. The strategic maneuvers executed by Earth's fleet were a testament to the years of careful preparation. As the military infrastructure of the Confederation crumbled, the power dynamics in the galaxy began to shift. On the central hub, General Vexner received another communication, his face hardening as he read the incoming data. "They've disabled the Vaughn fleet," he growled, seething. "But where are their weapons? How are they doing this?" The truth was simple. Earth had never needed to match the Confederation's power. Instead, it had learned from its mistakes, watching, waiting, and calculating. Now, Earth's response wasn't just about overwhelming force. It was about showing that it could dismantle an empire, piece by piece, without becoming the very thing it sought to overthrow. Captain Clark's voice echoed across the bridge of the Retribution as she monitored the status of the mission. "We're executing with control and restraint. We strike where it counts, and we do it with honor." And the galaxy, once so sure of its dominance, was left to watch as Earth, humanity, claimed its rightful place on the galactic stage, not as conquerors, but as champions of justice. The final remnants of the Galactic Confederation's power base were crumbling. Earth's forces had not resorted to the sheer brutality they had once feared. Instead, the strikes were clean, calculated, and devastating in their precision. The Confederation's once impenetrable military defenses lay in tatters, their fleets scattered and crippled. Earth had not declared war. It had delivered justice. On the USS Retribution, Captain Olivia Clark observed the results of their work with the same quiet professionalism that had carried her through this operation. A heads-up display on the bridge showed their progress. The Vorn homeworld was now under Earth's control, the communications grid inoperative, and the military assets neutralized. Every strike had been a calculated effort to disarm, to prevent further escalation, but to ensure that those responsible for the ambassador's death would face the consequences of their actions. Captain, we've captured General Vexner, Lieutenant Kalen reported, his voice steady, yet carrying a note of triumph. He's been secured aboard the Retribution. Olivia nodded. The Vorn general, the mastermind behind the false accusations and the ambassador's execution, was now Earth's prisoner. His once confident demeanor had collapsed, reduced to the cowering figure that now sat in chains. This isn't over yet, she muttered, turning back to the tactical map. Make sure the prisoner is prepared for transport. He's going to stand trial. The plan was set in motion. General Vexner, the symbol of the Confederation's hubris, would be brought before Earth's judicial system, not as a conqueror, but as a war criminal, accountable for his role in the injustice that had led to Daniel Harris's execution. This trial would send a message to the galaxy. Humanity had emerged from the shadows, not with a thirst for blood, but with the intent to restore balance. On Earth, President Wilson watched the developments unfold from the Antarctic Command Center. Her fingers rested lightly on the map of the galaxy, where Earth's ships were positioned, having neutralized the Confederation's military infrastructure. She'd had her moments of doubt, but now as the lights blinked across the screen, confirming the precision of their strikes, the message was clear. Earth's military might was no longer hidden, and with it, the galaxy would now have to come to terms with humanity's place in it. The Confederation is fracturing, ma'am. Admiral Donovan's voice broke into her thoughts, pulling her from the screen. He was seated in front of a second display, showing the galaxy's shifting balance of power. Species are starting to question the old order. The Vorn are being blamed, even by their allies. That's what we need, Wilson said quietly. The Confederation's leadership needs to be dismantled, but not in a way that turns the galaxy into a battlefield. We're doing this by exposing their hypocrisy. We're showing them the moral difference between their method and ours. Across the galaxy, word of Earth's actions was spreading. The once feared Confederation, which had ruled through fear and control, was now on the defensive. Other alien factions, those that had long been silenced under the Vorn and their allies' oppressive rule, began to speak out. They shared stories of the injustices they had endured, of the secret deals and corrupt power plays that had kept the galaxy fractured. In the corridors of the central hub, alien delegates exchanged tense glances. The walls that had once seemed so impregnable now felt claustrophobic, their strongholds no longer safe. A movement had started, and they could feel it. Species long oppressed by the Confederation's military might were slowly pushing back, inspired by Earth's calculated response. In a small chamber on the central hub, Elith L., the Centauri Federation member, who had once been a silent observer, now stepped forward with a newfound sense of purpose. He had watched the events unfold in horror, but now as he thought back to the words of Captain Elizabeth Mercer, something began to shift within him. He no longer felt the weight of submission. Instead, he felt the stirrings of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to undo the wrongs that had been done. Leith L., we must act, a voice said, pulling him from his thoughts. It was another Centauri representative, speaking quietly. The Vorn have overplayed their hand. They've enslaved us with fear for far too long. Now it's time to show them we're not their pawns any longer. Lith L nodded, a grim smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Yes, it's time to take back control. On Earth, the mood had shifted as well. The execution of Ambassador Harris, which had ignited a firestorm of grief and anger, was now the rallying point for a diplomatic uprising. The events unfolding across the galaxy were no longer about a single act of vengeance. They were about something much larger, the dismantling of an oppressive system that had held the galaxy in its grasp for far too long. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Retribution, General Vexner's capture marked a turning point in the Confederation struggle. As he was transported for trial, his once loyal officers were forced to reckon with the consequences of his actions. Many of them had followed him blindly, but now they were questioning everything. How had they been so easily manipulated? How had they allowed one man's ambition to lead them down this path? General Vexner, do you have any final words? Captain Clark's voice was cold, her eyes never leaving the man shackled before her. Vexner, beaten and broken, could only glare at her. You'll regret this, he growled. Olivia didn't flinch. We will see, won't we? Back on Earth, Lisa Harris watched the broadcast in silence. Her husband's death had ignited a fire in humanity that couldn't be extinguished. As the trial of Vexner loomed, she felt a strange sense of peace. Earth's hidden strength had been revealed, not through destruction, but through the power of justice. A quiet, relentless justice that would reshape the galaxy. The message Earth had sent was simple but powerful. Humanity would not be intimidated. They would not bend to the whims of tyrants, and above all, they would do what was right, no matter the cost. The Confederation might have been the galaxy's ruling force, but humanity had just shown them that even the strongest powers could be brought to heel when faced with the undeniable force of truth and moral clarity. The battle was far from over, but Earth's victory was already written in the stars. The galaxy had just witnessed what happened when Earth decided to stand tall, and it would never forget. The chaos of the past weeks had given way to a more solemn atmosphere. The warships that had once flooded Confederation space, brimming with the weight of retribution, had withdrawn into their hidden bases. Earth had not conquered the galaxy. It had redefined the very meaning of justice. Now as the dust settled, the real work began, the restoration of balance. Samantha Reed, Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Confederation, stood at the threshold of the Grand Assembly, her heart heavy with the knowledge of all that had been lost, yet brimming with hope for what could be gained. The world had watched as Earth rose from the depths of despair, not in anger or blind vengeance, but in a calculated, unyielding pursuit of righting the wrongs done to humanity. And now in this chamber that had been the heart of oppression for millennia, she was here to ensure that it would be different. The chamber buzzed with quiet chatter as the delegates of the Confederation took their seats, a palpable tension hanging in the air. Representatives from the 27 species now sat side by side, their once disparate factions suddenly bound by a common understanding. The old ways of governance, built on fear and manipulation, were no longer tenable. Earth had shown them the power of restraint, the strength of moral clarity, and the resolve of a species unwilling to back down when faced with injustice. Samantha had seen the fractured factions, the long-oppressed species that had finally found their voice, the once proud military factions that had dominated the Confederation, now unsure of their place in a new order. But Earth, from its strategic position, would lead this reformation, not as conquerors but as moral leaders, guiding the galaxy toward a future of true equality. The trial of General Vexner, the architect of the false accusations against Earth, had been broadcast across the galaxy. His conviction was not a matter of spectacle, but a testament to Earth's unwavering commitment to justice. The world had watched as, one by one, the leaders who had played a part in Daniel Harris's death were held accountable, not in a trial of blood and revenge, but in a trial of truth. Vexner's lies had been exposed, his corruption laid bare for all to see. Now the time for punishment had passed. The galaxy's gaze shifted from retribution to reform. "Ambassador Reed, the floor is yours," the High Arbiter announced, his voice carrying through the chamber. The once aloof alien, who had once passively followed the whims of the militaristic factions, now seemed oddly subdued, as though even he could sense the winds of change that Earth had set in motion. Samantha took a deep breath, steadying herself. She was not only representing Earth now, she was representing every species that had been subjugated, every voice that had been silenced by the old Confederation. Her hands rested lightly on the podium before her, but her mind was sharp, focused on the task at hand. This was the moment to reshape history. "Delegates of the Galactic Confederation," Samantha began, her voice clear and unwavering. "1 month ago, a grave injustice was committed. The execution of Ambassador Daniel Harris was not only an affront to Earth, but to all that the Confederation claimed to stand for. In his final moments, Ambassador Harris made one thing clear: Earth would not bow to intimidation, and we have not. We stand here today not in vengeance but in the pursuit of justice, a justice that respects the dignity of all species." The room fell silent as her words resonated through the hall. For the first time, the delegates of the Confederation were hearing the truth spoken with authority, not from a place of military might, but from a place of moral clarity. "Today," Samantha continued, "we stand at the precipice of a new era, an era where the governance of this Confederation is no longer defined by military might or coercion. Earth proposes the following reforms, not as demands, but as a commitment to a more balanced and just future for all who inhabit this galaxy. The laser plasma displays on the walls flickered to life, highlighting the key points of Earth's proposed reforms. Samantha spoke with measured confidence, outlining the pillars of the new galactic confederation: equal representation for all species. The old hierarchical system, where military factions held disproportionate power, would be dismantled. Every species, no matter their size or military strength, would have an equal voice in the decision-making processes of the Confederation. A transparent justice system. The trials of General Vexner and others like him were only the beginning. Earth called for the creation of a permanent, transparent justice system within the Confederation, one that would hold all leaders accountable to the same standards, regardless of their political or military influence. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The Confederation had been built on lies and manipulation, but Earth proposed a commission to address the abuses of the past. The commission would work to uncover the truth of past actions, offer reparations to those harmed, and ensure that the Confederation would never again be swayed by those who sought to rule through fear. As she spoke, Samantha's eyes scanned the faces of the delegates, noting the mixed reactions. Some were wary, unsure of what these changes would mean for their species. Others were visibly relieved, their long-held fears about the old regime being replaced with a sense of hope for a more balanced future. But it was not only the Confederation that needed to change. Earth, too, had learned valuable lessons in this process. The Phoenix Protocol, developed in secret for years, had proven that humanity could stand up to the galaxy's most powerful forces without destroying what it valued most: justice and cooperation. It had not been easy, and many had paid a heavy price, but it had been worth it. "The galaxy is changing," Samantha said, her voice firm but compassionate. "The old ways of power, through intimidation, through oppression, are being replaced by a new order, one where cooperation, equality, and justice guide our actions. And Earth, though once a newcomer to the galactic stage, is now proud to lead the way." The delegates sat in rapt attention, the room filled with a sense of anticipation. It was not just a speech, it was a turning point in the history of the galaxy. As Samantha finished speaking, the room was still. But then slowly, one delegate after another rose to their feet. It started with a quiet ripple, but soon the entire chamber was filled with applause. The galaxy, for the first time in millennia, was beginning to acknowledge Earth's place not as a newcomer, but as a moral leader. Samantha took a moment, her gaze steady and resolute. This was just the beginning. The work was far from over, but Earth had made its mark. The Confederation had been reformed, and the future now looked brighter, not because Earth had defeated its enemies, but because it had shown the galaxy that true power lies in the ability to lead with justice, not force. As the applause echoed through the chamber, Samantha Reed felt the weight of the moment settle over her. She had not only honored the legacy of Daniel Harris, but had helped ensure that his sacrifice would not be in vain. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's rise, and now it would never be the same. The transformation of the galaxy was unmistakable. Once Earth had been viewed as a fledgling, insignificant species, too eager and too new to be taken seriously. But now, across the Confederation, that perception was rapidly shifting. No longer were the humans seen as mere participants in galactic diplomacy. They had become its moral backbone, a shining example of how a species could rise above the fray and change the very system that had oppressed others for millennia. At the heart of this shift was the legacy of Ambassador Daniel Harris. His tragic execution, once a symbol of human weakness, had become the catalyst for a profound and far-reaching change. The galaxy, still reeling from the shock, now saw Earth's actions not as the vengeful outburst of a species bent on revenge, but as a calculated, righteous response that had brought the Confederation back to its founding ideals. The central figures of this transformation were the same faces that had once stood at the forefront of the struggle. Samantha Reed, now Earth's lead representative in the Grand Assembly, stood as a beacon of the changes that had swept the Confederation. Earth's vision for the galaxy, one rooted in cooperation, justice, and moral leadership, was taking hold. "We've done it," Samantha said softly as she sat in her quarters aboard the USS Horizon, looking out the viewport. The stars were the same as they had always been, but everything felt different now. Earth had not only survived the storm, it had reshaped the galaxy in its wake. The message Earth had sent was clear. It wasn't the size of the fleet or the strength of the weapons that determined the power of a species. It was the strength of its conviction, its moral compass, and its ability to act with restraint when others would have acted out of anger. The Phoenix Protocol, which had once been viewed as humanity's last-ditch war plan, was now regarded as a symbol of foresight and prudence. It had not been used for destruction, but as a countermeasure against oppression, a reminder that Earth would stand firm in the face of injustice, no matter the cost. In the days following the reformation of the Confederation, many of the long-oppressed species came forward, offering their support for Earth's proposals. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and the galaxy could finally see the true nature of the Confederation, a body that had been built on lies and manipulation, where the militaristic factions held all the power. With the defeat of the Vaughn military leadership and the dismantling of their network of control, those who had once been silenced now found their voices. The Andorians, species long marginalized by the more aggressive factions, were among the first to align themselves with Earth. Their representative, a tall, elegant figure with translucent blue skin, stood beside Samantha during the first public session after the reforms were announced. "We have been voiceless for far too long," the Andorian ambassador said, her voice steady and proud. "Now, with Earth's leadership, we will finally have a seat at the table where decisions are made. We thank you for standing with us." Across the galaxy, similar declarations were made. The long history of the Confederation's imperialistic ways was slowly being undone, but the journey was far from over. The true test of Earth's leadership would come not in the aftermath of the battle, but in the days and years that followed. Would the Confederation's new structure hold? Would it be strong enough to resist those factions who would seek to return to the old ways? The trials of the key conspirators in Daniel Harris's death were broadcast across the galaxy, setting a new standard for justice within the Confederation. It was not enough to simply arrest the wrongdoers. They would be held accountable through a transparent and public process, one that left no room for corruption or bias. As the trial of General Vexner unfolded in the open-air chambers of the new galactic court, Earth's commitment to fairness became apparent to all. The once invincible military leader who had instigated the false accusations that led to Daniel's execution was now on trial for his actions. It was not a trial for vengeance, but for truth. Earth's message was clear. Justice must be blind to power, and no species, no matter their influence, was above the law. The trial concluded with a resounding victory for truth. Vexner was found guilty of orchestrating the false accusations against Earth, and his military hold on the Confederation was dissolved. The galaxy, once divided, was now beginning to recognize the strength that lay not in power, but in integrity. In the weeks that followed, the reform of the Confederation continued. Earth's proposals for a new balanced structure were adopted, and a system of equal representation for all species began to take shape. Gone were the days when military strength alone dictated the terms of diplomacy. The Confederation was now a place where every species, from the smallest to the most powerful, had an equal voice. Samantha Reed's position as a diplomatic leader within the Confederation was a testament to Earth's newfound influence. She had once been a voice among many, but now she stood at the forefront of a new era for the galaxy. Her reputation had grown not through conquest or intimidation, but through her unwavering commitment to justice and equality. As she stood in the Grand Assembly Hall, preparing to deliver the first speech under the new governance, she couldn't help but think of Daniel and all that he had sacrificed. "We stand here today," Samantha began, her voice steady, "not as conquerors, but as partners. Earth has shown the galaxy that justice can be achieved without bloodshed. We have proven that our strength lies not in the power of our fleets, but in the strength of our convictions. The galaxy has changed, and Earth is proud to be at the heart of that change." Her words echoed throughout the hall, resonating deeply with the representatives of the galaxy's diverse species. For the first time in millennia, the Confederation was becoming what it was always meant to be, a place of true unity where the strength of every voice could be heard. Back on Earth, Lisa Harris watched the broadcast with her son, Jordan. The weight of the past weeks had taken a toll on both of them, but as they sat together in silence, watching the unfolding events, they felt a sense of peace begin to settle over them. Her husband's sacrifice had not been in vain. Earth had shown the galaxy what it meant to stand firm in the face of adversity, to act with integrity when others would have chosen destruction. And as the galaxy moved forward, it did so with a newfound respect for Earth's place among the stars. Lisa turned to Jordan, her eyes filled with pride. "Your father would have been proud," she said quietly. Jordan nodded, his gaze fixed on the screen. He'd be proud of what Earth has become. And as the sun set over the horizon, both on Earth and in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, it was clear that humanity's legacy would be one of peace, justice, and unwavering moral strength. The galaxy had been forever changed, not by war, but by the power of a single species' conviction. The transformation was complete. The Galactic Confederation, once an alliance forged on the foundation of coercion and military might, now stood as a new institution, one founded on justice, cooperation, and equality. Earth had led the way, its unwavering principles shaping the very core of the Reformation. The galaxy, still grappling with the magnitude of these changes, was slowly awakening to a new reality, one in which peace was possible and power was no longer concentrated in the hands of the few. In the heart of this new order stood the figure of Daniel Harris, a symbol of both the ultimate sacrifice and the catalyst for change. His life, his death, had sparked a revolution in galactic politics, a revolution that was not marked by the destruction of enemy forces, but by the reclamation of justice. Lisa Harris stood at the memorial, her eyes tracing the familiar contours of the stone that now bore her husband's name. It was no longer just a tribute to one man. It was a monument to the idea that humanity could rise above the worst of circumstances and transform them into something better. She had come to see it in person, to stand in front of the engraved words that had become a rallying cry for the galaxy. "We came in peace, but we will never be intimidated." Those were Daniel's final words, the words that had resonated across the stars. They were now etched into the heart of the memorial, a permanent reminder to all that Earth had not been broken. No, Earth had stood firm, and in doing so, it had forced the galaxy to reevaluate its definition of power. The memorial, located at the central hub of the Galactic Confederation, was more than just a place of remembrance. It had become the cornerstone of the new era, a symbol of the changes Earth had fought for. Around the perimeter, representatives from all corners of the galaxy stood, their heads bowed in respect. It was not just Earth that honored Daniel Harris today. It was the entire galaxy that recognized his legacy. Samantha Reed, now Earth's foremost diplomat, stood beside Lisa. She had witnessed the rise of Earth's influence, the reshaping of the Confederation from a place of fear and power struggles to one of balance and fairness. Her role in this transformation was critical, and she knew that without Earth's resolute stance, the galaxy might never have moved past its militaristic past. "Lisa," Samantha said, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "your husband's sacrifice has changed the course of history, and now the galaxy knows it." Lisa nodded, her gaze still fixed on the memorial. Her mind was filled with memories of Daniel, their quiet moments together, their shared dreams for a peaceful future. That future, she knew, was now becoming a reality, one that would not have been possible without his courage. The council that had once ruled the Confederation with an iron fist was now fractured. The leaders responsible for Daniel's death had been tried, and their actions had been exposed for what they were: a manipulation of power that sought to crush the very idea of equality. But no longer. The new order was in place, and the galaxy was already beginning to feel the weight of its significance. At the center of the Grand Assembly, the leaders of the former military factions stood, their expressions solemn. They had once thought that the galaxy's structure would remain unchanged forever, that the systems of oppression they had built would last indefinitely. Now they found themselves at the mercy of a galaxy that had chosen to embrace justice over fear. The Earth emblem, which had been displayed proudly throughout the central hub of the Confederation, was now a permanent fixture at the heart of the Grand Assembly. It was not just a symbol of Earth's place in the galaxy, it was a symbol of what Earth had brought to the table: hope, moral leadership, and a willingness to do what was right, no matter the cost. A final broadcast emanated from Earth, reaching every corner of the galaxy. It was a message from President Laura Wilson, whose leadership had been instrumental in guiding Earth through the darkest moments of the conflict. "Citizens of the Confederation," she began, her voice resonating with the weight of the moment, "we have shown you that it is not the might of your military that defines you, but the strength of your values. Earth came in peace, and we will never be intimidated by those who would seek to impose their will through fear. We stand here today as proof that it is possible to act with strength without losing our humanity." Her words echoed across the stars, reverberating through the halls of the Galactic Confederation as it prepared for its final transformation. Earth had not only survived its trial, it had emerged as the moral compass of the galaxy. The new governance structure that Earth had championed was taking shape. A system of equal representation had been established, one that would ensure that no species would ever again be silenced or subjugated. Earth's role was central to this new framework, not as a domineering force, but as a guide, a moral leader that would steer the Confederation toward a future where cooperation and fairness were the guiding principles. The trial of General Vexner and his co-conspirators had been the final act of the old regime, but it had also been the defining moment for the new era. The trial had been open, transparent, and fair, a stark contrast to the sham proceedings that had led to Daniel's execution. The message was clear: there was no room for injustice, no matter who you were. As the days passed, the galaxy slowly began to embrace the idea of a confederation that was truly inclusive. The changes were not immediate, but they were undeniable. The old powers, those who had thrived on fear, were being replaced by new voices, voices that called for collaboration, respect, and above all, peace. Lisa Harris stood once more before the memorial, her son Jordan by her side. The weight of the years, the sorrow of losing Daniel, still lingered, but now there was a sense of peace. The galaxy had changed. Daniel's death had not been in vain. His sacrifice had sparked a transformation that would last for generations to come. The stars, once symbols of the unknown, now held the promise of a better future. The galaxy had been remade, not through force, but through the strength of a single species' conviction. And as the camera pulled back, capturing the solemn beauty of the memorial and the vast expanse of the galaxy beyond, it was clear that Earth's legacy would endure. The words etched in stone would never fade, for they had become the truth of the galaxy. Earth will not bow to intimidation. The galaxy had been forever changed,